We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for tuning in. It's Coach Clee coming at you. I know you guys can't see me. I'm behind the camera, but I have a very special live and a very special segment going on today. I have two gentlemen on camera. I'll introduce them in a minute, and they will have a ton of good information that they're going to share with us, all right? First and foremost, it's your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, and your favorite baker's favorite baker, Coach Clee, coming at you. We're going to do things a little differently. I'm not going to ask for the same normal format on the introduction. We're going to do it differently, okay? So today, I'd like to introduce to you Robert Thomas and Dave Doyle of the, correct me if I'm wrong, the Lower Paxton Historical Commission. There we go, absolutely. And they are coming live and direct for Black History Month about some information here in Lower Paxton, specifically Linglestown itself. And I don't want to give away any fruits, anything like that, because I know there's going to be slides and there's going to be videos. I was here about 2 years ago, February 2019, for the Hodge family farm or orphanage, or what it is, right, which happens to be currently, or where it used to be, on my current Masonic Lodge's property there in Linglestown. I'm with Chosen Friends Lodge 43. Want to give a shout out. I see Jason Brown's on. I see Felix Garden Hire's on. Thank you guys for tuning in. We got a bunch of information. Jason Shoop's on. Thank you for tuning in. Please tag, like, and share. But we're going to jump right into the interview. I got this notification probably about a month ago that you guys learned about, I believe, Irma King. Is that how you found out about this presentation, or how did you find out about the presentation itself?
Actually, Clee, the way this started, it started maybe innocently a couple years ago. In that I happen to be personal friends with the people that own the current Foote farm property. Mm-hmm. And they had mentioned to me a couple years ago that they thought their farm was perhaps the first farm owned by an African American in Lower Paxton Township. Mm-hmm. So I just put that away in the back of my brain and fast forward to now and thought, this would be a neat story to tell, because once we turned the first page in researching this, mm-hmm, the history just flowed.
I believe it.
We thought we had a simple story in a way about a farm, and then once we started researching, we found we had much more. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and where Irma King comes into it was one of the ways that we research. The owner of the farm was Forrest Foote, and so I started to try to build a family tree, mm-hmm, using Ancestry.com, and doing that because it's really kind of interesting, because you can start to get little tidbits from it. You might find some military records, or mm-hmm, some pieces of history, or some documents and photos, etc., that you don't have access to.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And I came across a name of somebody who posted a lot of information. Her name was Irma King. So I reached out to her, not knowing whether or not she would respond. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the next day, or maybe 2 days after. And she is a direct ancestor of this family. And it was amazing, because all the wealth of information that she had was just, it's like an onion. The more you peel it, the more you find out something else. And like as Bob was saying, to me, when we started this project, it might tie back to George Washington, mm-hmm, it might tie back to some other English ancestry, and we found out that it goes back to a plantation owned by the Fitzhughs, and the Fitzhughs plantation was pretty much where all of Washington, D.C. is now. So We're taking this little farm in Linglestown, and we're taking it back to there. Mm-hmm. And I'll let Bob explain a little bit more about the history of who they are. But the one part that I would like to make clear is that in 1920, when the orphanage and the mm-hmm, senior citizens home was here in Linglestown, Lower Paxton had approximately 2,700 occupants, residents. Mm-hmm. And to have a Black Mason Lodge be able to establish the senior citizen home and then eventually an orphanage, mm-hmm, was amazing. And the other part that I loved about it was how it was completely accepted by all the neighbors. You didn't have protests, you didn't have arguments, it was just,
Very much embraced.
yes. And that part I just absolutely love, but.
Well, and I think, Dave, that's, as we researched, we found Forrest's family ancestry goes back, like you said, the Northern Virginia area.
Okay.
But what we found was that Forrest and his wife Fanny had been in Pennsylvania from at least 1910.
Oh, wow.
Because in 1910, we find them in the U.S. Census down in Cornwall, below Lebanon, Lebanon County. And then in 1920, we find him up the river in Halifax, and he's running a blacksmith shop in Halifax.
Right.
And then 1930, he shows up at the Masonic home on Linglestown Road.
As a caretaker.
Yeah, as him and his wife are running, basically an early aged home, and then by 1940 he's on his farm. But I would like to think that they felt accepted in the community, that they felt they could buy a farm and put down roots. I hope that's how they felt, honestly. And but yeah, it just like Dave said, what started about a story about a small farm just kept growing on us, and Irma was just tremendous with the ancestry information she provided. And because what we found were, the Foote family, Forrest family were very active in their community in Falls Church, Virginia. They were the leading grocer or merchant in the town, and this is back in, right after Civil War.
Right.
And then we start finding out that Forrest's father, who was an ex-slave, purchases a farm in Seven Corners, Virginia in 1864,
Right.
which is still during the Civil War.
Exactly. Yeah, that was going to be my next
And
question.
then
if
it's
you could
like,
highlight
wow,
that.
and then we read things that not only buy a farm, but he's also a guide and a blacksmith for the Union troops in Virginia.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, this just keeps, like Dave said, it just keeps blossoming on us. And we just thought it was a great, local story. I mean, our commission, we try to tell the untold stories of our township. And we thought, this is a great untold story that people need to hear.
Exactly.
And that's, I think it's turned out pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is even today, about 20 minutes before we came here, I get another correspondence from your lodge, and that's now opening up another door that I want to research, because even though we did our presentation, and you can advertise that on our YouTube, but it's not done.
Nothing
Not
we
by
ever
far,
do
yeah.
is the final version, because once we go public with one of our presentations, we usually get people from the community saying, hey, I have a picture of that.
Right.
I know this. So yeah, nothing we ever do is ever like done. And we'll come back and revisit with an update. This year's been tough for us to update much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought, it was a great story. I mean, you think about folks, in 1920, 20s, and they're operating, we didn't have nursing homes then. This predates the nursing care we know today.
Exactly.
And here these folks are running, an early version of basically a nursing home. And I just think that takes special people to probably sacrifice, to do that. So it just, like I said, it just kept opening up more, and Irma kept throwing us more. And I mean, we actually hit our technological bounds as far as how much editing we could do with the presentation, because, we're still tweaking things as we sit here right now. But yeah, that's, it was a great story. And then we actually found, a couple of guys, older gentlemen in our community that actually knew them. And we could get some personal, feel. One guy was, he was young, but his dad was the main milk hauler. So he was able to convey some of the information about the dairy farm and the
Right.
milk going down to the Hershey chocolate factory. And I thought, wow, I like chocolate. So, you know, that was all neat. And then the folks that owned the property afforded us access
Right.
to walk through it and take pictures
And what exactly did you see when you walked through the property itself?
actually, the property, it's an old property, but it's in excellent shape.
Right.
It's in excellent shape. I guess I'd call it a little gentleman's farm today.
Yeah.
It's about 4 acres.
And the barn's a bank barn, which
Yeah.
there's not many of those around anymore.
The house is 1851, I think, so it's a very old house, old farmhouse.
And in the basement, there's a huge summer kitchen. And we had stories that were told by the neighbor that her father.
The adjoining farm,
Yeah,
yeah.
the adjoining farm. Her father used to come over and they would cook in the basement. And she even told a story about her father pulling one of Forrest's teeth out, you know, because
Wow.
he needed dental work. So it was just amazing. And the interesting thing about the one part that we saw was where the ties, and they were big timbers, where the timbers tied in, everything was done by Roman numerals. So we knew exactly, or they knew exactly where everything went.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yep.
well, and, I mean, the barn is pretty much probably as it was.
Other than the roof, yes.
You know, I think the roof had blown off a few years ago, but inside the barn is laid out exactly as it would have been when
Yeah.
Forrest was there. The stalls are still there, and it was just kind of like stepping back in history,
It was.
you know, because you get into a barn that's probably built in the 1800s, you know, there's no nails in it.
Yeah.
Everything's wooden dowel and tenons, and you can see the hand workings on the beams.
Stone
And-
walls.
And it's just, you know, it's a neat old barn, but I think the barn's pretty much as it was. So, it was just neat that a farm like that has still survived, because
Right.
the other 50 acres has been subdivided and built on.
Exactly.
And here this little gem of a historical property was able to survive.
Yeah,
And-
things like that were built to last. I saw, and I know you described most of that in the video, that I don't know if you posted it yet, but you're gonna soon be posting it, so I got a chance to see the video, and you explained most of that in that. I got to see it. But I do remember a certain part that there was a shadow in I think the kitchen of the basement,
Oh,
which
well, yeah,
which
while
leads
we
me
were-
to believe
while we
I'll
were
never
touring
stop
the
by
house.
that barn.
Yeah, while we were touring the house, the folks that own it, I don't even know how we got around to it or something, and they said, oh yeah, there is a ghost here. And we kind of looked at each other and said, really? And they said, yeah, you know, I think
They felt it was
they
a
had
kid.
a name for it, I forget. But they said, nah, it's just, you know, like once in a while the cupboard doors slam,
Yeah,
the doors open up on their own. You know, a door will open on its own, but yeah, it's.
I'll take your word. I'm good for hours. I'll just look at the pictures. I'm
We
okay
didn't
with
go
that.
there expecting that, did we? I mean, that was like, whoa, okay. But yeah, it was just, like I said, you know, our commission, we strive to tell our local history, and, you know, we stumbled across this and just thought, you know, this would make a great way to start this year. You know, we've gone wow, we haven't met for like a year in person. And we have a great following. The public has really, you know, come in on everything we do, and we thought, you know, let's get back out there and put something out for
Yeah.
people to hear about our local history.
And Bob was talking with the principal at Linglestown Middle School. And he's excited
you know Ron.
because he wants to bring that in, because he wants the students to understand that slavery is only several generations away.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people don't understand that. They think, oh, this is ancient history. And I think that's real good. And then I was talking with a friend of mine this evening who teaches at the CD Middle School, and he's real excited for the video because he said it'll go right into his what he's teaching right now. So I'm glad that we're able to bring, because local history, kids look at textbooks, but they can touch this. They can
Yeah.
drive by that
Yeah.
house. They can understand.
Physical evidence.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, and local history often doesn't get told.
Yeah,
Right.
It does get forgotten
You know,
in the
it
sauce a
gets
little bit.
forgotten and generations pass and the history gets lost and that's what we've been trying to do is, you know, we're a very old historical area here and there's things
A lot
that
of
people
gems
have long
around.
forgotten. And so that, we just thought this was a great local story to tell. And
Especially for Black History Month.
yeah, it just fit right in. The timing was perfect, you know, so.
And, you mentioned Ron Porter. He was a former teacher of mine in high school. He's a personal friend, and he is a former guest on the show as well. Shout out, Mr. Porter. But it's interesting you said slavery wasn't that many generations ago, because I remember personally, I met my grandfather's mother. She died at, I think, a couple days before her 100th birthday when I was 9 years old. She had good memories. She could still get around. She went to church. She worked on a farm in South Carolina. So we would go visit her in the summertime. And I'd sit on the front porch with her, and she would tell me the stories that she remembered speaking with her grandparents who were slaves. Who were slaves and got out of slavery, that she could remember their stories vividly. And so to actually have that connection physically, I thought everyone had it at that time, to be honest. It was amazing because my son would never, of course, never meet her, but to him, slavery, like you said, is a long ancient history.
Right.
For me, it's old history, but it's relatively recent because I knew someone who knew someone who was a slave.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's amazing. And those are the stories we're trying to preserve, and we wouldn't have been able to do a lot of this without Irma.
Yeah, she filled a lot of the family history, because as soon as we started investigating, research it, we quickly found articles about the family in the Seven Corners, Falls Church area, Virginia, and so we knew we were onto something else. And then when Dave found Irma, man, it was like a gold mine of.
Because it was very confusing researching it, because Fred was married twice. And he had two families, and a lot of the children's names were the same.
Oh, wow. So it gets confusing. Yeah, I can
trying
see
to
that.
tie that back into and
Yeah.
without Irma, you know, she's the one that explained it to me that that's what happened, and that made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and she provided the historical perspective about the land sales back in the 1950s. You know, that the original homestead, was not to be sold from the family, and by 1950s, here you have an undeveloped plot of land in a heavily commercialized area in Northern Virginia, and the land's worth a lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
And it just.
Yeah. He only paid $500 for it, and
$500 for the farm, yeah.
And Irma also, it was kind of interesting because she was so proud because her family made it on the front of Ebony magazine.
Right.
Yeah.
With pictures of the house and stuff. And it was great because, and this is what makes it nice to be able to tell somebody's story. She would write us and she would say, I have so many tears in my eyes, and they're tears of joy.
Yeah.
Because my family is being remembered and the story's going on. And she never would have really known Forrest, but it's just amazing how that makes our day.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I see, in closing, I just want to bring up the fact that I think we learned also today, again, Chosen Friends 43, they shouted out for the African American History Day, quote for the, or not quote for the day, person for the day was Benjamin Foote, who I believe is another descendant or heir of the Foote family, who was one of the first African American police officers in the city of Harrisburg, and he has a statue and monument. I'm not exactly sure, somewhere in Pennsylvania, more than likely Philly. He was also a member of the Chosen Friends Lodge itself, so there's more digging to do.
You gave us some more work to do.
Yeah.
Because
Sorry,
we had not
but
found that. And, but it's interesting because that was one of the questions I had was Forrest and Fanny end up at the Masonic home. And I was wondering, was he a Mason himself? Is that how?
I would assume the connection's there.
But now that you're saying
I hate to say yes
maybe,
because I don't know, but I think I'd be at least 75% right in saying yes.
Yeah, it just seems like, you start connecting dots like, maybe they were. which is another piece of the story, you know, so.
Gets deeper and deeper.
Yeah, that's how these history things go.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Please check out the video. The video will be on YouTube, and I will definitely make sure that it gets posted here for your entertainment and learning value. But once again, it's your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, and your favorite baker, Coach Clee, coming at you saying peace. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.